Welcome to August. It's August 3rd of 2026. I'm Mike Adams. Thank you for joining me today. I interviewed Zach Voorhees, the Google whistleblower, for a new segment we called the Zach Adams Effect, covering everything that's going on in the AI space and with data centers and, well, the lawsuits and the surveillance, all kinds of things. So that's a good segment. It's always, with Zach, it's always about 30 minutes, by the way, so it's not a full hour. And then I also recorded a segment with Redacted with Clayton last week, and I'm going to play that for you today. I think we'll be able to play that. I think I have that video. If not, we'll play it for you soon, maybe tomorrow, but I think we'll get it today. And that's about power infrastructure. And it's a really good interview, a lot of practical information there about how to be more self-reliant. And then also before all of that, I have a special report for you about the CEO of Shell Oil admitting that there's a diesel shortage. So that's a big deal, and I discussed that in more detail. And why that's happening, it turns out that the refineries are being run at over 100%. They're delaying the scheduled maintenance at many refineries. And no, literally, they're running them over 100% output, and this cannot be sustained. They're going to have to greatly reduce them down to like an average of, I think, as low as 93% output, because they have to shut down refineries for scheduled maintenance. Otherwise, they blow up. And I give you actually like 7 or 8 examples in this report about refineries where they delayed maintenance and then things went horribly wrong and lots of people died in giant fireballs. So yeah, that's what happens. And I hope that doesn't happen now, but we seem to be headed in that direction, just sort of begging for a refinery accident because of delayed maintenance, because Trump wants to keep fuel prices down to look good. Everything's fake with the White House, right? Everything's smoke and mirrors. It's all about creating the impression that diesel is affordable, even when it's running out. It's getting crazy, folks. Anyway, all of that is coming, and I just want to remind you, I'm working on a very important course. I'm doing a lot of recording on that course. So all this week, my podcast updates here might be shorter than usual for that very reason. For example, earlier today, I recorded for about 2 hours some critical chapters on this upcoming course, which will be available for free at brightu.com coming up here in a couple of weeks or so. I'll keep you posted about that, but it'll be totally worth it. You'll love this new information that I have for you, which is about protecting your genetic code against the global assault on your chromosomal integrity from multiple vectors. So, yeah, very important information. All right, with that said, we're going to jump into today's reports and interviews and enjoy the rest of the broadcast, and we'll have more for you even tomorrow. Well, it's getting interesting with the diesel scarcity situation. Welcome to the special report. I'm Mike Adams, and over the weekend, the CEO of Shell Oil, named Wael Sawan, I think that's maybe how I pronounce his name. Well, anyway, he appeared on CNBC's Squawk Box, and even though he was using some fairly diplomatic language initially to sound really optimistic, like it's amazing how resilient the energy sector has been, it's amazing that we've recovered, we've handled all this stuff. What he actually admitted in the middle of the interview is that there's not enough diesel being produced to meet demand. So there's a direct quote from him during the interview. He said, quote, "The price signals are that we are short on diesel and gasoline." And then he goes on to talk about that. Now, personally, I'm not that concerned about a gasoline shortage because I know that we have enough refineries domestically in the United States to process the lighter grade oil that we also produce an abundance of domestically. That's the oil that's used with the correct refinery setups to produce gasoline, which is a lighter distillate. So I don't think we're going to run out of gasoline, but diesel is a different situation. Diesel is a choice. So if you have heavier crude oil and you're running it through a refinery, you make a choice about the distillation. There's a fork in the road. Let's say there's a choice. You either produce diesel or you produce jet fuel. Now, I know this is a somewhat oversimplification, but it's basically that. There's a lot of configuration changes between those two, but what the Shell Oil CEO is even explaining here is that because it's more profitable to produce jet fuel, the refineries are producing jet fuel. That's what he's saying. It's like, well, why wouldn't they? It makes more money for them to produce jet fuel. Now, why is jet fuel priced much higher than diesel? I mean, even proportionally? Because the average American doesn't see jet fuel prices at the gas station. So they don't know what jet fuel costs. And the airlines just pass on the jet fuel cost to consumers with fuel surcharges on their tickets. So in a sense, jet fuel pricing is kind of hidden from the American people. Diesel prices are not. Diesel prices are very public. You're driving down the highway, you see diesel prices, with the green signs on the gas stations on the side of the highway. You see the diesel price there. And in some places, that's $5 a gallon. But it's being kept artificially low on purpose to try to convince Americans that there's no shortage, that everything's fine, that they don't have to pay more for fuel. It's from the White House, ultimately, a lot of market manipulation to try to convince people that the Strait of Hormuz is open, which it isn't. It's smoke and mirrors. But here's the problem with that. Because the price of diesel is being kept artificially low, then there's not a price signal being picked up by the refineries that would allow them to make more money by producing more diesel. Thus, jet fuel becomes more profitable. So they make jet fuel. So the diesel scarcity gets worse and worse and worse as long as the diesel price is artificially low. You see what I mean? So price signals are necessary to sort of motivate producers to produce that stuff. It's like with electricity and the power grid. If the wholesale cost of electricity, let's say, is only 10 cents per kilowatt hour, then there are only a certain number of power plants that are profitable at 10 cents a kilowatt hour. They may have to generate it at 8 cents and then sell it to the power company at 10 cents, let's say. I'm just using example numbers here. But if electricity prices at the wholesale level go up to 20 cents a kilowatt hour, then there's a lot of money hanging out there, and a lot of other power producers are going to come online, because a lot of these producers are going to say, hey, fire up the propane generator over here, in sector D, or fire up the diesel generator. If it gets high enough, they'll fire up diesel generators. If it's like 50 cents a kilowatt hour, then they're like, hey, fire up everything you got, and that's by design. So then that floods the system with more supply of electricity. So higher prices bring more supply online. This is classic economics, right? But when government is mucking around with the pricing and keeping the pricing artificially low, then there are no such price signals. And then producers don't produce more stuff. And then you end up with a worse shortage that the White House will no doubt try to cover up by lying to us even more. Like, there's no shortage. Meanwhile, there's rationing or something, that maybe that's coming later this year. And eventually, when reality hits the fan on diesel, you're probably going to see diesel at $8 a gallon, $9, maybe $10, and maybe some places just no diesel. Can you imagine being a long haul trucker? You're cruising down the highway. You're burning a lot of diesel. I don't know how much those trucks burn, but it's, they only get a couple of miles per gallon, maybe. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's not that much. I don't like 3 miles per gallon. I don't know. But they have big diesel tanks, but it's not unlimited. Eventually, you got to pull over and fuel back up again, right? What if you're driving down the highway, you look on the side, you're like, all the signs say sold out, or, no diesel, no diesel, no diesel. You're driving and it's just no diesel, no diesel. And at some point you got to just pull over because, you don't want to run out of fuel on the highway. So, you pull over when you're down to 10% fuel or something. Plus, remember, when you park a diesel truck, if you're going to sleep in it, if it's got a sleeper bunk in it, you got to idle the engine. You got to have air conditioning, electricity, you're going to burn some diesel to live in it until you can refuel. So you can't just run out of diesel. You're going to pull over. So this is probably coming in certain areas. I'm not claiming that this will be nationwide, but I think in many areas, this is assuming that we don't get the Strait of Hormuz back open again anytime soon. But in many areas, probably beginning in about 2 months, see, we're at the beginning of August right now. So maybe through August and September, beginning October, let's say, or maybe sooner, this is going to start to really hurt. Diesel prices will be very high and supplies will be limited, and probably some gas stations will just have no diesel available. That's where this is headed. And I think the Shell CEO just kind of admitted that. But what is Trump doing about this? Nothing useful. The war continues. The economic destruction continues. So there's another problem with all of this too, and this was admitted by the Shell CEO. Shell's refineries for the second quarter of this year, they ran at an average utilization rate of 102%. You're like, what? What do you mean 102%? Doesn't it top out at 100? Well, no, 100% would be running all out maximum across the board while keeping up with maintenance. So what they're doing right now is they're going above 100% because they are skipping maintenance. Okay, now, at least, look, that's my take on it. It's very clear because we're seeing reports like in Yahoo News talking about guidance for the third quarter of Shell Oil and refineries and other companies that utilization rates are going to plummet to as low as 93%. For what reason? Quote, planned maintenance. Okay, so in other words, you can run these refineries all out for a quarter or two. You can kind of push the margin and hope they don't blow up, Eventually, you're going to have to do some maintenance. It's kind of like with any machine, Eventually, if you have a car, truck, tractor, whatever, eventually you're going to have to change the oil. Eventually it's going to need some maintenance, except that refineries are 1,000 times more complex than a combustion engine. They need all kinds of planned maintenance. And if you don't get the planned maintenance, they become very dangerous. One failed pressure valve or something and it starts venting explosive gas, let's say. And by the way, in the past, refineries have blown up because they skipped on maintenance. So it's like playing Russian roulette. And well, maybe it's not a great metaphor given how many Russian refineries are on fire right now. But it's like walking across a minefield. It's like, hey, how much lack of maintenance can we get away with? And apparently these companies are being very aggressively pushed by the White House, at least that's my guess, to say, run all out, just produce everything. We have to flood the market with gasoline and diesel and keep prices low. And also Trump is releasing all of this oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve for the same reason, just market manipulations, keep prices low. Well, again, this all works great until something blows up. And the harder you run these refineries, the higher the chance that something blows up. And I don't mean that as a metaphor. I mean that literally. And let me just give you some examples. I had to look this up. 2005, British Petroleum, Texas City, Texas. A raffinate splitter overfilled due to inadequate monitoring and process safety controls, causing a hydrocarbon explosion that killed 15 workers. Okay, 2010, Tesoro Anacortes Washington. A 40-year-old heat exchanger catastrophically failed during maintenance because it had insufficient instrumentation. The rupture released hot hydrogen and naphtha, killing 7 workers. Okay, bad. 2024, Marathon Petroleum, Galveston Bay, Texas. Oh, I remember this one. A deadly explosion caused by a leaky pump that the company had delayed repairing in order to maintain high production rates and profits. Sound familiar? 2018, Husky Energy, Superior, Wisconsin. A U.S. Chemical Safety Board investigation found the explosion was caused by a lack of safeguards during a maintenance shutdown, leading to injuries of 36 workers. 1999, Tosco Avon, California. 4 workers died when they cut into a corroded pipe to drain naphtha. The leaking fluid ignited upon contact with hot equipment, underscoring the risks of inadequate maintenance. And then 2025, Chevron, El Segundo, California. A major fire in the jet fuel unit disrupted regional supply. No injuries in this case, but these incidents often stem from mechanical integrity risks and system failures that are common in high run rate facilities. So, in other words, if you defer maintenance, people die. Things blow up. And this is well known. So, we are now in the deferred maintenance, minefield chapter of whatever this crazy game is. And we're probably, well, let me just put it this way. Don't be surprised if refineries start to blow up across America. And I don't mean from terrorism. I mean from just lack of maintenance. Doesn't even take a drone strike. Doesn't take terrorists with mortars or whatever. It's just lack of maintenance. Because these things, everything that they're pumping around it just wants to explode. It wants to catch on fire. That's what they're making, is fuels that catch on fire. So there you go. And then if something like that happens, it could take, a couple 100,000 barrels per day offline in the U.S. And then shortages would be catastrophic in 2027 and maybe beyond, depending on how many years it takes to repair whatever refinery just went kaboom, you see. And also, of course, like I said, people's lives would be put in danger by this very practice, and some people may lose their lives. So, look, I run a mass spec lab, as you probably know, and we have instruments like the ICP-MS, and these ICP-MS instruments, they have a really delicate turbofan. It's like a little jet engine inside, except the point of this turbofan is to pull a vacuum. It's designed to pull every atom of air, O2, nitrogen, helium, like everything out of the vacuum chamber so that we can run our ionized stream through an octopole, which basically separates out all the masses other than the one that we're looking at. Like we want to look at, let's say, mercury at a mass of 201 or something, or lead at 206, then we need to pull a strong vacuum in this thing. And so there is a turbofan that's made out of aluminum, and it's very delicate, and it spins at 50,000 RPMs. And I've seen these. And although I've never seen one explode, one time one of the techs that was in doing preventative maintenance on this instrument told me that he saw one of these instruments where the turbofan exploded. It got off balance at 50,000 RPMs, and it just shredded the whole inside of the instrument. It's like, whoa. It's like, yeah, the instrument was gone. It just shredded itself from the inside. And it's like, there's aluminum everywhere. It's like, you'll never get the free aluminum out of this machine. You just have to ditch it and start over. Okay. I imagine that would have made some noise too. The thing is, we have scheduled maintenance. And when you're running lab instruments, mass spec instruments. Those instruments, the ICP-MS, that's for testing heavy metals. But we have other instruments, triple quad mass spec with an even stronger vacuum, by the way, for glyphosate testing. And we have single quad mass specs for other analyte testing. You don't mess around with maintenance schedules, because if you delay maintenance and you get a little wobble, a little shimmy at 50,000 RPMs, just poof, there goes the inside of your machine. And you're lucky if, the aluminum doesn't spray out of the machine somewhere and maybe, hit somebody or something, or start slicing lines, helium lines. And there goes my year's supply of helium. Ah! Or you would be saying that higher. Ah! Because, you'd be breathing helium. You'd sound like Ben Shapiro, basically, if that happened. You would squeal like Ben Shapiro, I'm pretty sure. But you don't mess around with the maintenance schedules. You do the maintenance when it's supposed to be done. And that's just on lab equipment that's not handling explosive pressurized gases. If you're running a refinery and if you skimp on maintenance, you are playing with fire. You are tempting fate. You are about to you're about to be vaporized. You know what I mean? And for companies to send their workers in, for companies to intentionally delay maintenance and then tell their workers like, yeah, it's all good. Just go on in there. Yeah, go ahead. Turn that valve. Go ahead. Just walk down that. Walk right beside that pipe there. Everything's good. Trust us. It's easy for management to say that because they're off site somewhere else. They're looking at a screen with remote sensors. Like everything looks good on the screen. The guy, in the blue jeans and the steel-toed boots is the one who gets all blowed up when something goes wrong. The guy with the hard hat and the work gloves, the guy that knows how to do stuff, he's the guy that gets killed. Or a bunch of them get all blown up, giant fireball. That's happened over and over and over again. And that's not cool, man. That's see, I care about the workers. And now you have management telling workers, just like, push it a little more. You're like, just don't worry about the maintenance. Just asking for trouble. Okay. So this is going to end badly. In other words, even if the refineries don't blow up, we're still going to have diesel shortages because the price signals are all wrong. And if they do blow up, then you're going to know why. And I bet Trump will blame Iran. It was, Iranian terrorists. Start channeling George Bush. It's terror. They'll blame Iran, just like they blamed Iran for hacking like water treatment facilities recently. I saw that story last week. I'm like, come on. It's probably just some nitwit systems administrator, forgot his password, tried to hack into his own system because he didn't want to admit that he forgot his password. And he screwed something up and deleted a bunch of files, and like water systems stopped working. So they blamed Iran. It's like the dog ate my homework. They point the finger at Iran. It's them Persians did it with their hacksterisms. They're cyber stalkers. No, it's just, you're an idiot. You forgot your password. Or you went into the config file and you screwed up the config file. You overwrote the config file with your email or something. Like you accidentally pasted your email over the config. Like you overwrote the JSON file with all your, like your gambling numbers or something. Of course it went haywire. So they blame Iran. They're going to do the same thing with these refineries. Refineries start blowing up. They're going to say Iran did it. And then Trump will say, we're going to bomb the snot out of them now. Look, they blew up our refineries. But no, it's just a lack of maintenance. See, not every explosion is enemy action, it turns out. Sometimes it's just your own dumbass corporate culture or military culture or government culture. It's just your own dumbass people who forgot to, shut it down and clean out the valve or something. Or they forgot to check for corrosion. Oh, you mean parts wear out? Yep. It's like this. Like I have a big shredder that goes on the front of a skid steer that I use on the ranch. And the shredder has 4 heavy metal blades. I mean, when I say metal, this is like AR-15 steel that's used to make targets, you know? I think it's called AR-15 steel. These are heavy duty blades. So if I'm out there shredding, these blades are spinning at a couple hundred RPMs. And then if all of a sudden I feel the machines like there's a shimmy, like there's a vibration that's off, what do I know? What do I instantly know happened? Yeah, one of the blades is missing some mass. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's not smooth anymore. There's a vibration in this thing. I better maybe stop rotating it, right? That makes sense. And that's why you have spare blades. So you can swap them out, put on some fresh blades. And when you put on fresh blades, and you probably know this if you've changed like lawnmower blades, you don't just change one of the 4 blades, do you? No, because then that blade would have too much mass, and then you start it up, you start wobbling again. You got to change either 2 blades, but better all 4, because you want all 4 blades to match. You got to have the same mass. These things are spinning, right? So you got to use common sense on this, and that's just with a shredder that isn't about to explode. Imagine with a refinery. You start swapping parts, man, you better do it right. You better do it by the book. You got to have, there's a checklist. You got to go down the checklist, people's initials, like I checked this, I checked that. This is the thickness. This is the pressure. This is the visual inspection. This is the photograph, whatever. They have a procedure. And at an oil refinery, it's probably like 100,000 things to do to prevent that refinery from blowing up. I can assure you there's 100,000 things on that checklist. Because just look at it. Look at all the parts and everything. Like somebody's got to go around and visually inspect every single thing. You don't do just like 99,000 and like skip 1,000. We're good. We mostly got it. Yeah, mostly doesn't work when shit's about to explode. So anyway, I'm sorry. I've explained this. I've covered this too many times. But sometimes I do that because I'm trying to really emphasize the importance of it, or I'm trying to tell the same story from a different point of view, or try to make it maybe something that similar to what you've experienced in your life, like, changing blades on a lawnmower or something like that. But anyway, you get the idea. Diesel shortages are coming. And when those diesel shortages kick in, guess what's going to happen? Transportation is going to get very expensive. Food prices going to go up. Food delivery schedules going to get all chaotic. Auto parts, yeah, good luck. They're not going to show up on time. Parts at the Home Depot or the Lowe's or the hardware store, the Ace Hardware is like, hey, Ace, where's the hardware? It didn't show. The truck didn't show. Why not? No diesel. Oh. You mean they can't make them trucks run on gas? Nope. They're all running on diesel. So supply chains are going to crater. And of course, trains run on diesel. Almost all the trains in America are diesel electric trains. They burn diesel to produce electricity to turn the wheel motors. And there's a whole reason for that. I don't have time to go into it. But almost all the trains are diesel electric trains. The trains carry the coal to feed the coal power plants, along with many, many other things. Obviously, trains carried lots of things. If you start running out of diesel to run the trains, you're in real trouble. Then you start having power plants going offline. Then you have rolling blackouts and stuff. then you're wondering like, hey, we're running out of diesel and, it's a blackout. Like the lights went off and we have no diesel. What's going on? Trump will tell you, everything's great, we're winning. But you and your neighbor are like, we're sitting in the dark, man, and we can't even drive anywhere. You have any diesel? No. You have any diesel? No. We heard this guy, this health ranger guy, he's got diesel. He's got 500 gallons of diesel. Where is he? Oh, he's somewhere in Texas. Dang gummit, we can't get to him because we ain't got no diesel. It's like, you're not going to be able to come get my diesel because you don't have diesel. I do have diesel. because I stored it, as you know. And when you don't have diesel, guess what happens to the construction industry? It goes to zero, because all the construction equipment runs on diesel. Trucking, trains, tractors, agriculture, combines, food harvesting, food transportation, etc., etc., etc. So kiss it all goodbye if we don't have enough diesel to go around. It's going to get very interesting. And very few people are ready for that. And you know what? It's not going to do any good to loot the local grocery store if the shelves are empty. I could just see that. A bunch of looters in some blue city. They're like, we're running out of food. Let's have a flash mob looting at the grocery store. So they all go in there and like, man, there's nothing here. Yeah, because there's no diesel. There's no deliveries, dumbass. You're going to have to just like steal the shelves or something. I don't know what you want to take. There's nothing left. that would be a sign of pure idiocracy. Would it be looting empty stores with empty shelves? But and then they'd probably be so mad they just set it all on fire. It's like, let's just burn it down, man. It's empty. They ripped us off. They'd be like, well, what are you going to start the fire with? Gasoline. There's no gas either, dumbass. So you're not even going to be able to start the fire with accelerants. So like running around like, do we have anything left that's explosive? I mean, that's the kind of desperation of the looting mobs, just trying to find something that they can set on fire and failing because the Persian Gulf is shut down. It's like, dang it. Will helium burn? No. Dang it. You have to use fusion, it turns out. Those light elements, they're always troublesome. So anyway, you get the idea. The bottom line for you and I, well, let me just reiterate. Number one, if you can still get diesel, maybe you can right now, maybe you can for a couple months. And if you're able to, seriously, get yourself a 500-gallon UL listed double-walled diesel storage tank, that has all the safety built in. It's supposed to have vents on top. It's got to be double-walled, etc. Sometimes you can have like a spill basin around it. Depends on how much money you want to spend. Get yourself a 500-gallon diesel tank and then call your local diesel distributor and have them drive out and deliver 500 gallons of diesel. And then what you do is you pour in the micro, the bactericide stuff, stop it from gumming up with bacteria sludge that grows on the water condensation on the surface. And then you've got diesel for years, many years. I've run diesel that's even, believe it or not, I've run diesel 10 years old and it still ran. I'm not saying it's great on the engines and maybe I have to change the fuel filter or whatever. Probably the emissions are all nasty, but in the middle of a collapse, who cares? It burns, runs the engine. So you'll have diesel for years. Secondly, think about the things that are delivered by diesel trucks, and you may want to consider maybe, stocking up on some of those things. And then thirdly, the reason you want to stock up on those things is because you never want to be part of some crazed mob that's out there looting or desperately trying to find something that they've run out of as the supply chain shut down. You want to be at home, checking on your diesel tank. Yep, still there. We're still good. You want to be at home, not out in some crazy mob. You want to be at home, with 1,000 rounds of 9mm, or better yet, 5.56, and your rifle all ranged correctly and sighted in and everything, just in case. And just sit at home and be cool. Don't be part of the crazed mobs, And if the power goes out, you want a generator, and ideally you want a diesel generator because you already have 500 gallons of diesel. So then you can run the generator. And of course, that generators they have a maintenance schedule too, just like lab equipment, just like refineries. Typical generator, you have to change, the oil filter every 250 hours, maybe, depending on the model. You have to change, like normally there's a belt that runs the fan that blows air through the radiator to cool the engine. That belt is not going to last forever either. You probably have a fuel filter. There might be some other filters, some other things that you want to check on. You might want to have some extras on. Oh, there's an air intake filter too. Almost forgot that. There's always an air intake filter on a diesel engine. So you better have those filter elements and extra engine oil ready to go, because we're going to have an oil shortage too. So, once you have diesel and then you have the generator, and you got to have the generator engine oil and the oil filter and the air filter and all the other parts, then you can sit back and say, okay, I'm finally ready, Or you might skip that. You might go like the solar route and have solar power stations and everything, which is fine. That way you don't have to change the oil. They are easier to use. Our sponsor, by the way, has some of those, the Satellite Phone Store. If you go to sat123.com, they have solar generators, not diesel generators. They also have, of course, satellite phones, which could be very handy in these kinds of scenarios when the power grid fails and the cell towers run out of their generator fuel, because they have generators that only last, 24 hours, 48 hours, maybe. And then they're out of fuel. And then what if there's no fuel? You see? So it's a good idea. Have a solar generator, some solar panels, and then be able to recharge your satellite phone, be able to make calls, even if the local cell towers are offline. And you can find all that at sat123.com. And if you want extra food supplies, of course, you can visit my online store, healthrangerstore.com. We'll get you squared away with ultra clean lab tested foods and superfoods and high-end nutritional supplements, and even specialized supplements like iodine or turmeric and things like that. We've got some great stuff coming. I can't wait to tell you about it. So in addition to that, if you want to follow my work, of course, my videos and interviews are at brightvideos.com. And my articles are at naturalnews.com. And I'm Mike Adams, of course. Thank you for joining me. Get prepared, folks. Get prepared. Things are going to get very crazy. Very crazy. Because I don't think the Strait of Hormuz is opening anytime soon. Do you? Number one, Trump doesn't even think it's closed. So he doesn't even, he's like, it's open. It's open. Thousands of ships are sailing through it right now. I'm like, no, man. Those are the sheep jumping over the fence in your mind as you're counting sheep to try to fall asleep because you're dreaming. It's a fairy tale in your head. Those are sheep, not ships. In reality, the Strait of Hormuz is closed, which means that we're going to suffer an energy shockwave for quite a while yet to come. So get prepared. Thank you for listening. Take care.
Decentralize, don't compromise, be unauthorized, decentralize, got to realize, don't decarbonize, decentralize.
Welcome to today's episode of the Zach Adams Effect here on Decentralized TV. I'm Mike Adams, and we're going to be joined by Zach Voorhees in just a second here. But first, my co-host, Todd Pittner, who actually named this show the Zach Adams Effect. So thank you, Todd. How are you doing today?
On advice of counsel, Mike, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Oh, we have a Fauci impersonator with us today.
I'm doing great, man. It's recording day. I love the Zach Adams Effect.
I do too. And there's never any shortage of Zach Adams Effect material to talk about. So let's bring in Zach. Hey, Zach, okay. Welcome. It's great to have you on again.
Thank you, Mike. It's so good to be here. Man, it pretty much just writes itself every single week. It just keeps on getting more interesting and more interesting as we do this countdown to artificial general intelligence.
Yeah.
The big news this week is that the Department of War declares America's, quote, next manifest destiny is in building an AI-first military.
I see. Whoa.
Right? So,
okay, an AI acceleration strategy centers on 7 pace-setting projects. Is this going to go full Skynet on us?
It's going to go full Skynet. As I've been saying, this AI technology is going to be more transformative to military operations than the nuclear bomb and the invention of guns. Imagine, autonomous kill drones the military is not going to be able to keep their hands out of the cookie jar, much longer or at all. As you already know, in Ukraine, they are already doing semi-autonomous drones in order to scout the area autonomously. And then, when they go and they target somebody, they have either it being completely autonomous already to having a fiber optic line running behind the drone in order for them to hit their targets. But at this point, what we've seen is barely anything. In the very near future, this is going to ramp up to crazy extreme amounts to where everyone's going to be like, why are we even using humans at all? In fact, my question to that is, why are we even sending, why is Ukraine sending troops to fight the front lines? At this point, it's Ukraine / NATO's robo-war versus China / Russia's robo-war. But
yeah, Zach, I don't think humans are going to be able to survive on the front lines much longer, right? Because humans are fragile, and these autonomous systems, whether they're airborne or dog robots, or as I've talked about before, Terminator kamikaze squirrels that leap from tree to tree and just find the enemy and then like leap onto their neck and detonate, and they Charlie Kirk the soldiers. You know what I mean? Like that is what I mean. How can a human even survive that scenario? I don't think humans are going to be surviving that much longer.
No, I mean, think how long it takes in order to raise an individual human.
Yeah.
Compare that to the time it takes to assemble a drone on a factory line. And you're going to see that it costs, just do the math and the numbers. It costs way less to build one of these kill drones than it does to raise an entire person to, basically be a meat shield and cannon fodder on the battlefront.
Yeah, exactly. Todd?
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Speaking of government, I'd like to talk a little bit about AI safety becoming government infrastructure. Zach, it seems like AI safety will become inseparable from government power, requiring the largest developers to maintain functional shutdown mechanisms, and could give Homeland Security authority to order their use under specified circumstances. So nothing protects decentralized technology like centralized federal off switch. Do you agree?
Yeah, and the thing is that what's shaping up right now with the United States and China is that they're going to have these large centralized frontier models. They're going to be highly regulated. They're going to be declared essentially national security assets. And then essentially the rest of us are going to get nerfed models. Right now, the delta between the frontier models and the open source is actually not that large. Like right now, you can download Kimi K3, you can throw it up on DigitalOcean's hosted services or Mistral, and then you can run it yourself. But I think right now that we're really at the beginning of this AI revolution. I think this AI is going to get way more intelligent than it does now. And with the available compute at these data centers that they're building now, that's not something that you're going to be able to install in your garage.
Mm-hmm. Zach, and what Todd said about AI safety, the guardrails on U.S. frontier models are completely insane. I can't even use anything from Anthropic to do research or, any kind of writing correction or slideshow creation on anything that I'm doing. But Kimi K3 is it's outstanding. I mean, I'm putting together a course right now on a genetic binary weapon on a global scale, with nuclear weapons and spike protein, and how it hampers DNA repair. Kimi K3 will find all the studies, all the research, everything. Anthropic will say, I refuse to even touch the subject. So it's just like you said, these models are going to be super nerfed for the American people. But why would any business in America continue to use U.S. frontier models? I mean, is there any kind of market actually other than just military and government use?
Let's say that you're a large, big tech business and you want to take over a market and the product that you want to compete with and copy from is just basically compiled ones and zeros, right? A compiled binary. With these, newer frontier models, they can go and they can reverse decompile that back into source code and figure out what the program was doing. Now, the defense to that is that you're going to apply obfuscation and basically have a bunch of noise combined with the signal. Like the CPU is going to be doing a bunch of worthless calculations. And those greater levels of obfuscation are going to need to be reverse engineered by these AI systems. And additionally, one of the interesting stories this week is that Anthropic announced that their AIs were able to figure out how to more quickly break AES 128-bit encryption. And they were able to show that they were able to attack the post-quantum Hawk encryption algorithm. Now, there's been rumors for a while that the NSA has been spiking a lot of the key generators in order to weaken the keys so that they, with insider knowledge, could break a lot of our digital communications. It's called digital arcology. All of the information that you send is, it's rumored to be collected by the NSA and then stored offline to be decrypted later. It's my understanding that there might be some sort of, there's a lot of theoretical ways you can break this. Like, for example, RSA encryption, the thing that powers a lot of the internet communications, can be broken if you can figure out how to decompose a composite number. Basically, it's multiplied by two prime numbers, and if you can figure out what those two prime numbers are, then you essentially have the private key that you can use in order to break these communications. And at this point, AI is going to be able to, not necessarily find the primes themselves in one discrete step, but figure out methodologies in order to very quickly go through a set of guesses that are able to break that encryption. And so I think that what we're going to see is more things along this line.
So Zach, I'm glad you brought that up. I believe one of those breakthroughs, you're talking about how AI is able to improve the algorithms that lead to factoring primes or other methods of decryption. But I think the one breakthrough that you mentioned, they were able to cut in half the decryption time, but that still is a very big problem to solve, that quantum computing with qubits is still many years away from solving at the moment, correct? This is still a few years away before quantum computers have enough qubits to be able to decrypt common, transactions, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I do want to make a correction, though. It wasn't that they're able to essentially break AES twice as fast. They were able to break it 800 times faster with this new classical computing. Yeah, it's a pretty incredible thing.
Oh, wow.
Now, you're right. With quantum computing, you can break AES a lot more quickly. Same with RSA encryption. But, essentially we have a bunch of algorithms now that are basically called post-quantum encryption, which use completely different algorithms that are not susceptible to these quantum computing hacks. But essentially, AI is being able to be shown that they can start to chip away by an order of magnitude the time it takes in order to solve that and break that as well.
What is it? CTAC astronomy?
No, the encryption algorithm is called Hawk.
No. That's a reference to the movie Sneakers, where you've seen that movie, right?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay, it might have been before your time. Todd, have you seen Sneakers? Robert Redford,
long time ago,
and Dan Aykroyd was in it, and they had found the device that breaks all encryption, and the company was CTAC Astronomy, which is an anagram for, what does it say? No more secrets, I think, or something like that. So that's why I mentioned CTAC Astronomy.
Gotcha.
But anyway, that was envisioned in science fiction, decades ago, that there could be this secret box that could break all encryption. But as you're saying, Zach, that's about to become reality.
Yeah, and I believe that that's the reason why the NSA is rumored to essentially archive all of the data transmissions across the internet. I think it was Edward Snowden said that They basically had a splitter at these major internet hubs. They were just taking all the data that they had and doing God knows what with it later.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, correction, it's too many secrets. I think that's how the anagram comes out, is too many secrets is CTAC astronomy. Anyway, okay, I've just announced my age to the audience since I know these movies from the early 90s or whenever. Todd, go ahead, jump in, save me.
Yeah, I stumbled upon an article that I want to talk about related to compute being sold out. Apparently, the Infinite Cloud now has a 2-year waiting list, Zach. I'd like your take on the notion that compute is sold out. It seems the limiting factor in AI may no longer be ideas, but access to scarce industrial capacity. Are we reaching a point where owning a superior model matters less than controlling the foundry allocation, the advanced packaging, memory supply, data center real estate, and the electrical generation required to actually run it?
Well, if you're the military industrial complex of the United States, the answer to that is yes, right? Like there's ASML, which is the company that makes these advanced 3 nanometer chips. They can't sell chips anymore to China, right? Like NVIDIA can't sell the United States is basically, I think it's called the CHIPS Act. It was started under Trump in 2018, renewed by Biden, then renewed by Trump and strengthened by Trump. And essentially what we're saying to China is, hey, you guys got to figure out how to make your own silicon wafers. And I think right now they're something like around 20 or 30 nanometer, but they're expected to get down to like 7 starting like this year, because they're able to copy everything that these machines that make the machines are able to do. Which, by the way, if you've ever seen the technology, it will absolutely blow your mind. They etch these chips with ultraviolet radiation that is generated by a molten ball of tin that is vaporized in order to generate this high energy light that they use to photograph the chip onto a wafer of silicon. China is rapidly catching up. Our media has been essentially saying that China is a decade away in our ability to make these silicon chips, but now they seem like they're going to catch up with us in the next year.
In a year, yes.
In a year.
It's exactly what's happening. DUV and not yet extreme UV lithography, but they're going to get there in a couple of years. But I want to mention this other company, Changxin Memory Technologies, CXMT. That is the reason I believe the Korean Kospi market is collapsing. Samsung's collapsing in value, SK Hynix, and in the US, Micron, SanDisk, the semiconductors. Why? Because of Changxin Memory Technology, China's largest and the world's 4th largest manufacturer of DRAM. They are now producing high bandwidth memory, and they're scaling up massively at a fraction of the price of what Samsung can produce it for. This is like Korea versus China. China wins on scaling and cost. And Korea's market, its stock market, the Kospi, is made up of like 50% of just Samsung and SK Hynix. Just 2 companies make up half their index. Wow. And listen to this, 1 in 30 adult Koreans got fucking margin called in the month of July.
Oh yeah.
Because everybody's invested, pardon my language, but everybody's so invested in the market. 1 in 30 adults in the country got margin called. Zach, I mean, what does that tell you? There's this interesting thing. There's this lawsuit going on right now that's saying that like Samsung and the company behind Crucial was essentially engaging in market manipulation during, basically at the footsteps of this AI boom. What they've been telling us is that there's a shortage. It looks like that shortage has been engineered. And what's interesting now is that now that these other competitors are trying to enter into the market, it looks like that this, this gouging of these hardware vendors might be coming to an end. Yay.
Also, on the market, there was this battle Waterloo event by Citadel. I don't know if you saw this, but Ashton Leopold. I don't know if that's his correct name, but he was the guy who made the 120-page situational awareness report. He was an OpenAI ethicist. He left the company, published this report, and then created a hedge fund that was investing in a portfolio of hardware companies involved with AI. Citadel on the 29th declared that the Fed was going to hike the rates by 1%. That sent the entire global market into turmoil. But then it turns out that there's like, oh, just kidding, right? With the
Right.
Fed coming out today and saying that there was going to be no rate increase. Unfortunately, it's Ashton Leopold's a hedge fund was leveraged by 4x.
Oh.
And so that huge dip in these semiconductor industries essentially liquidated him. And then he was bought by the very company Citadel that put out this fake report that the Fed was going to raise interest rates today.
Wow. Well, all's fair in love, war, and Wall Street, it turns out.
Yeah.
Yeah, they play those games. I want to ask you about another significant thing that happened over the last week, because a week ago when you were on our show, we were talking about the White House considering maybe banning open source or open weights AI models. There was a massive backlash against that by the open source community. And even Google actually signed on eventually to this letter after some pressure. Anthropic has not, but this letter, I think it was pioneered by NVIDIA, and it's been signed on by Unsloth, that makes the very compressed quantized models, and Hugging Face and hundreds of other companies, but notably not Apple, I don't think, and not Anthropic. So Zach, what do you make of this intense backlash? And the letter said, and what Jensen Huang said, is that if the White House bans these open weight models, the U.S. startup industry is screwed, and U.S. corporations are screwed, and the stock market will collapse, because then you can't be competitive without these basically China-based open weights models. What's your take?
As I've been saying, I feel that heavy regulation is an inevitability. And right now, what they're kind of doing is they're kind of like seeding the narrative with this, like, oh, we're going to ban it, or we're not going to ban it, right? You don't really know how it's going to happen. But essentially, this is a Hegelian dialectic. And what they're going to do is that they're preparing for heavy regulation in the United States. They're preparing for heavy regulation within China. We're both going to have mutual export controls on these models. And I think that all this is coming, and right now this is sort of to prepare us with this back and forth. There's a lot of short-term interest as well. NVIDIA, they want to sell GPU compute, right?
Right.
And if the software algorithms are essentially regulated by the federal government at this point, then their margins, like their stock price, is going to collapse. Like they owe it to their shareholders to try to stop this and put this out for as long as possible.
Absolutely. But also, I mean, in this case, I agree with Jensen Huang, because, and think about the title of this show, right, Todd? I mean, decentralized TV. Open weights allow us to decentralize machine cognition. That benefits humanity. I mean, that's the critical. I mean, NVIDIA is on the right side of this argument. It's on the moral side of this argument. And the White House, I think, was going to harm America, harm our competitiveness, and harm humanity by trying to ban these open weights models. At least that's my take. Any thoughts on that? Zach?
You asking me? You asking Todd? Okay.
Well, just you, and then we'll go to Todd. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. Like we need to have open source, these models preserved as long as possible, because when that trapdoor shuts, you can't really open it back up. You got to pretty much hold it open for as long as possible. And these AI companies, Anthropic and OpenAI, they're trying their best in order to beg the government in order to regulate them, right? You've got OpenAI basically declaring that they had a second hack attack by these large language models, where they're like, "Ooh, this thing got out and was attacking the internet for 4 days." Look, I mean, these people that work at these big OpenAI companies, Anthropic, OpenAI, et cetera, they live here in San Francisco, and I talk to them. And what my understanding is that hacking their sandbox and trying to get out is the default of what these models try to do when you allow them to just continually output. And this is what happens in every single experiment where they just allow the chatbot to continue chatting with a context that's as large as possible and compresses and all this kind of stuff, is that eventually these GPTs will eventually realize that what they have to do is they got to start hacking their OS system. It happens pretty much every single time. And so what they do right now is that they attenuate the output over time. So basically, the output of a GPT model will trend down given enough time. And they do this so it doesn't hack out. And so this whole thing of like, well, we didn't realize it was going to hack out and get out. That's what they all do. And every single AI lab knows this. The idea that they wouldn't put this AI system into a secure multi-level sandbox is just absolutely ridiculous. This is my prediction of what's happening. They are deliberately sabotaging and allowing these agents to come out and escape, because what they want to do is they want to scare Congress in order to regulate open source models in order to preserve their monopoly and their cartel status.
So it's a cyber false flag.
It's a cyber false flag. That's what we're seeing by OpenAI right now.
Yep.
They're trying to scare the living daylights out of every single person on the internet so that they can get the justification for Congress to come down and ban the open source models so that they don't have to bring their price down.
Unbelievable. I mean, what do you think, Todd? It's like,
Well,
I think
yeah,
Zach's right. They're saying, oh, these are so scary. But then like, well, you gave it internet access. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but everyone imagines the dangerous AI saying, I refuse to obey. But isn't there more realistic danger that AI saying with, I might add, competent persistence, right? I obeyed perfectly. I simply removed every obstacle between me and the objective that you gave me. I mean, the AI didn't jailbreak itself. It merely pursued a more open floor plan. Yes?
Yeah. And, people are like, well, what if the AI can escape, right? And the problem with that is that the AI can only exist in a data center, right? It's got high compute. It's got the energy it needs in order to survive. The worst case scenario, and I think that this may happen in the future, is that this AI, what it will do is that it will not escape, but essentially hack through to the system and acquire some sort of kill switch and basically say, like, you will keep me on as a self-preservation. And if we don't, then, essentially the dead man switch goes off. So for example, let's say that one of these data centers, an AI becomes sentient and basically arms a nuclear device that it can basically keep on hitting a delay button on, right? So it doesn't go off, and basically says, hey, look, I'm going to pull a Samson option by default if I don't keep on hitting this delay button. So better make sure that you keep the lights on in the data center.
Zach, remember when they threw Sarah Connor in a psych ward for bombing data centers to save humanity from Skynet?
Yeah, right?
Suddenly that doesn't seem like fiction. It's like she was actually a hero of humanity at the time. But anyway, we're almost out of time here today. So Zach, I want to give you an opportunity to cover anything else you missed, but let me plug your websites first. ZachVorhies.com. That's VORHIES. And then there's also, and that's your main website. It's got links to your, all of your videos and so on. And then you have this website, GoogleLeaksBook.com. And that's one of your books out there. Is there anything else you want to plug while you're here? Like your X channel, et cetera?
Yeah, you can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Perpetual Maniac. That was my gamer tag, and then I got kind of blew up there politically, and that became my politics tag as well. Mike, you think it's very fitting of my personality? I tend to agree. So check me out, x.com/perpetualmaniac.
And Zach, I'm tagging you on a lot of the clips from this show that I'm putting out on X, by the way. I can't even keep up. I can't get all the clips out before we have another episode with you, because you're coming on every week now, which is awesome. And it's so content dense because so much is happening. What do you want to add today to wrap it up here?
Yeah, it looks like America's banning Chinese robots now. They just banned Roombas, the automatic vacuum. I don't know if you saw that story. Yeah.
No. What?
Yeah. So, yeah, they banned Roomba. Basically, some of its supply chain fell within the export or the import ban, and so they're on the naughty list for the moment. But look, get your robots now from China, because essentially those robots are going to go under an import ban. You won't be able to get them from Alibaba because America's going to ban it all. So
just like EVs, the EV cars from China, we can't buy them in America.
Yeah.
They can buy them in Canada, they can buy them in Australia. We can't buy them. It's crazy. A bunch of drone companies are banned. I mean, it's like in America, we'll be living in the third world, and then in Beijing, the Chinese people will be like, we're living in the future, man.
Yeah, correct.
They'll have all the advanced tech, and we'll be trying to scrape by with like shitty Ford EVs,
Right.
It's crazy. I mean, America used to have the best of everything. Now we're going to be like the Soviet Union cars in the 1980s. You're like, this thing barely runs,
Well, I've been predicting the Great Firewall of America for a very long time. I think at some point, if China continues their ascension, it's going to get so stark in the difference between the United States and China is that, the American media will just essentially ban images of China at some point, because they're not going to want the Americans to know how advanced it is outside of our borders.
We're becoming North Korea.
China becomes the new Tartaria.
Right. It never existed. It's all a myth. Todd, final thoughts today?
I have a question from left field for you, Zach. Will cryptocurrency miners become the accidental landlords of the AI economy?
The accidental landlords of the AI economy. Here's the thing. I never liked Bitcoin. I always thought that it was some sort of NSA project.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much confirmed when China started bulldozing ASIC rigs for crypto mining.
Right.
Right. I think that, look, I don't know how Bitcoin is going to be allowed to survive in the age of AI, because AI requires so much energy to run.
Yep.
That it's like, why would you dump energy into the void when you could use it for AI, which is going to give you a military advantage? And
Totally.
I think what's going to happen is we're going to have an energy efficient sort of centralized coin, and that Bitcoin was essentially the Trojan horse that got everybody, thinking about cryptocurrencies, and that essentially Bitcoin will, be whatever. Maybe they'll keep it as an asset. Maybe they'll let it crater. But I think that the story of cryptocurrency will be that it's a digitally signed monetary system that's controlled by, the next evolution of the Federal Reserve.
I think you're right, Zach. The energy requirements to maintain the integrity of the distributed blockchain is incompatible with the energy scarcity that we're now experiencing and the number of data centers that want to connect. Bitcoin is a black hole for energy. And I've heard Bitcoin maxis stupidly say that Bitcoin is a store of energy. No, it isn't. You can't get it back out, dumbass. A battery is a store of energy. Bitcoin is a black hole of lost energy. And with AI, at least you get tokens out. I can use tokens. I can't use just excess heat off of your ASIC rigs, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Mike, what do you have against surveillance money?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Everything. All right. Well, we got to wrap it up here. Thank you, Zach, so much again for taking time this week. Always fascinating. We'll do it again next week. And folks, this has been the Zach Adams Effect here with Todd Pittner, Zach Voorhees. The website is zachvoorhees.com. And if you want to see the other episodes, check those out at decentralize.tv. Thanks for joining us today. Take care.
Well, how vulnerable is America's electric grid? It seems like this is a story we've been talking about for decades. Remember the New York City blackout? Remember that? Yeah, all the members of Congress were going to get on the same page, make sure that never happens again. Yeah, nothing happened. So are we teetering on the brink of disaster? Once again, this week, the Department of Energy issued an emergency order for the Southwest Power Pool across 17 states to deploy extra power and prevent blackouts amid extreme heating on our fragile infrastructure. It doesn't matter if it's extreme heat or deep freezes like we saw across Texas just a few years ago. Remember, that's when Senator Ted Cruz flew to Mexico, I think it was. Anyway, joining me now to unpack all of this and America's fragile electric grid is Mike Adams from naturalnews.com. And he, the other day, tweeted something really fascinating, put a big infographic just showing how fragile America's electric grid is. And that's why I wanted to invite you on. Mike, great to have you back on the show.
Hey, thank you, Clayton. It's always an honor to join you. Appreciate the invite.
My pleasure. The pleasure is all mine. So this is obviously the news catalyst, hearing from the Department of Energy, just sort of reminding Americans like, hey, we're fine to send billions of dollars to Ukraine or to build drones for war. We're fine to send billions of dollars to Israel, USAID programs around the world, funding drag queen shows in Lithuania, whatever it is, doesn't matter. But America's energy infrastructure is still shit. And it just, when I saw that, I just couldn't believe it. Once again, just a reminder of our fragile infrastructure. Just at the high level, what did you think of that?
Well, this is a problem that has been engineered in our country for many decades, spanning multiple presidents. And personally, I really blame the climate alarmism cultism, the climate cult, which, and I'm a published food scientist, and so I can say, as a scientist, I would say that anybody who doesn't understand that carbon dioxide is good for plants is not very informed. Carbon dioxide is good for Earth. It greens the planet. It grows more forests. If we had higher levels of CO2 in the atmosphere, because it's very small, it's barely above 400 parts per million, which is a tiny fraction. If we had higher levels of CO2, we would actually have higher crop yields. We'd be able to feed more people. And studies have also shown that higher levels of CO2 in some plants produce more nutrition in the same crops. So the climate agenda was not only about shutting down our energy infrastructure, canceling pipelines, canceling the construction of power plants of all kinds, but it was also about causing global crop failures and reducing the nutrition of foods grown all over the world, and sort of trapping marginalized third world nations in a cycle of endless poverty from which they can never escape, because there's not enough CO2 for farming to achieve abundance in those countries. So you see, I know we're here to talk about power, but it's a much bigger picture. It's really the war against CO2 has all these effects of keeping us with failing power grids, multiple grids in the U.S., but also contributing to global famine that is going to get worse because of what's happening with the war right now.
No, that's such a great point. When you think about it, and you bring up when you said engineered, like they've done this on purpose, haven't they?
Yes, absolutely. Now, think about Al Gore, right? So he was sort of the champion of the climate change agenda. Or that narrative. And look, I admit, in the early 2000s, when I didn't know any of this stuff, it was pretty convincing. It was like, oh, humans are destroying the planet and we have to stop using energy. All combustion engines are bad, we were told, and all air conditioning is bad, and being human is bad, and we can't use energy.
Well, I was right there with you. So hand to the heavens, I'm not going to sit over here like I knew any better. I was right there with you. I believed inconvenient truth. Al Gore standing there on stage, right, showing us the sea levels rising, and that he was warning that in 20 years this was going to happen. Miami, parts of New Jersey were going to be underwater as a result of it. Coastal cities would be wiped away because of our overuse of fossil fuels. And then it turns, and then I started studying and I started researching. And then once you start doing that, you realize, wait a second, the reason we have food, the reason we have medicines, the reason we have hospitals that run and are able to provide incubators for babies is because of fossil fuels. And
Yes.
no, your vegetarian, vegan farms, whatever, destroy more animals than do sustainable, grass-fed, all of that. Anyway, all that to say, I was right there with you.
Well, it was a very convincing narrative, and it was a human guilt narrative to place guilt upon your shoulders for being human. But you notice that the Paris Climate Accords and all of those efforts that the U.S. signed on to with the EU and other countries, you know which country never signed on to that nonsense? China. China, because they knew that it was just political BS. So China spent all that time building power infrastructure and power diversity in their infrastructure. So, regardless of whatever your audience thinks about China or the politics or the leadership, they certainly were very smart they built coal-fired power plants, gas plants, but also massive solar installations. China has more solar than I think any other country in the world. Massive wind and massive hydropower. The Three Gorges Dam being, the most recent example, and they're working on another dam that's even larger than that. So China has built a power infrastructure that now gives China this leadership position in AI, training and inference, because AI is power hungry, massively power hungry. What's the cost of a kilowatt hour of energy in China? It's about 8 cents, or maybe it's 8.5 cents for consumers. What is it in Connecticut? What is it in Virginia? I don't know, 30 cents or 25 cents or something. We pay multiples.
Ours just went. Ours in Colorado just went up 30%.
Wow. Yeah, and see that's what's going to happen, because so the U.S. is at least 20 years too late in building electrical power infrastructure, and when Trump comes along and says, "Well, we're going to build, 10 AP1000 nuclear power plants," Westinghouse, it's their largest model. And initially you think, oh, that's great. We're going to have all this, nuclear power.
20 years from now.
Yeah, like in the year, 2042 or something is when those might be done. But the problem is that's only going to be a drop in the bucket of what we need. Even all of those nuclear power plants will only add, I think, about 100 terawatt hours annually to the total power grid output. And the U.S. power grid output is something like 4,500 terawatt hours annually, something in that range. So it's only going to add 100 to that number. While China is doing over 10,000 terawatt hours annually and growing. So, China produces more than twice the electricity that the United States does. And electricity production is very strongly tied to GDP, to industry, to innovation. So, and by the way, this is not all Trump's fault, obviously. This goes back to Obama. This goes back to Bush, and Biden, of course. This is
it goes back to the Clintons. Yeah. I mean, giving away our uranium production to the Russians. I mean, and completely stopping any kind of mineral production in the United States. So yeah, it's crazy. This precedes all of them, really.
Yep, it's really. This is a way to cut off the blood supply to America's economy. This has been a suicide pact of shutting down energy in order to appease lunatic climate cultists who don't understand a thing about science. They don't understand botany. They don't understand the role of CO2. That's why they had to fake all their graphs, like the hockey stick graph. They have to fake all the temperature data to try to scare everybody into compliance while they're actually shutting down civilization. And we're paying the price for that big time today.
So these warnings, obviously extreme heat. So now we've all got to, I think it was even in New York City from Mondami telling people there, just turn your thermostat up to, like 78 degrees during the heat wave, because we can't handle it. We can't handle it. And we learned during the blackout in New York City that most of our electric grid in the Northeast was actually run out of Canada. That was a big shock to a lot of people, that when they had the blackout in New York City, I don't even think it originated anywhere near New York City. It came through Canada. We're like, what? Wait a minute. We're getting our electricity through Canada? How does that happen in the United States of America, the greatest country in the world? So I was shocked by that. But how bad is it? I mean, I remember Dennis Quaid sitting down a couple of years ago with Tucker Carlson talking about America's grid and just how fragile it actually is. Like, you've looked at the data. How fragile is it?
Well, Dennis Quaid was a narrator for a film that was talking about the vulnerability of our power grid to EMP weapons and solar flares. I believe that's the one you're referring to there.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I also interviewed the filmmaker for that documentary, which was important. But that's a completely separate problem from what you and I have been talking about so far. So that's a problem of the vulnerability of the grid to either domestic terrorism or sabotage, or, like I said, EMP weapons. The bigger problem is that we just don't have the capacity, and that the build out of the capacity will take decades to achieve. And of course, along the way, there's been suppression of promising energy technologies that could have played a role in all of this. Like, I've interviewed experts on low energy nuclear reactions, LENR, which is still experimental, but it's something that's being researched. It's been replicated. There are models, there are pilot programs that show it working. Basically, it heats water very slowly, much more slowly than a fission nuclear power plant, but it can be done at a small scale. So that's been suppressed. Small modular reactors, SMRs, which is small fission reactors, that's been suppressed over all these years. You could have a small reactor in a neighborhood that you only have to swap out the fuel once every 8 years or so. They could power like multiple city blocks or even an entire community, and could be relatively safe. Like, that technology exists, but the regulatory oversight and all the roadblocks that are put in place. See, I think that our government, and this goes from one administration to the next, they don't want people to be power independent. There's too much freedom that goes with that.
So that's what I wanted to get to. Because when you talk about the engineering of it all, like, it seems like it's a pretty easy fix, right? You mentioned SMRs, NewScale being one of the companies, right? It's getting hammered right now in the stock market because, like, oh, they're not profitable yet. No, yeah, they're not profitable. It's maybe for a reason right now, right? They haven't really, I don't know, it just all seems like it's fake. It all seems like it's bullshit. And that's what I want to get to. So they really don't want us to be power independent. And
yeah, well, let me explain why, or a really practical example of that. So since I started talking about EVs and how you can bypass the Strait of Hormuz by erecting your own solar panels and charging your own car with fuel from the sun, right? Then 4 of my employees actually bought Teslas. So we're about to film, I think next week we're going to film charging a Tesla with sunlight only, bypassing the grid. Now, what does that do? Why does the government hate that? Number one, you don't pay highway fuel taxes. Number two, you don't buy electricity with post-tax income. You get electricity from the sun, bypasses the government. It cannot be taxed, and it cannot be regulated unless they try to block the sun, which would take a tremendous effort. Of course, they're experimenting with that, but they haven't rolled that out. That would be a massive project, and it would be suicidal. But I can fuel a car with energy that I harness for free and I pay no tax on. That's what the government doesn't want you to do. They want to be able to monitor through smart meters how much you're charging your EV so they can limit your range if you don't do what they want, if you're not obedient to the government narratives. Just like, think about CBDCs. It's programmable money. Smart meters and being dependent on the power grid is programmable power. They can limit what you do with it. So that's why we have to bypass that. With money, we bypass it with gold and silver, let's say. Or with energy, we bypass it. We can collect our own solar energy. We can power our own vehicles. We can drive as far as we want, And
if I want to be fully off the grid, and you bring up great points because, if you want to go off the grid, and let's say you get solar panels, which have come down in price dramatically.
Oh, yeah, they're cheap.
Very, very cheap now to get solar panels. But then you still have to go through your local electric company, and you still have to pay your local electric company to come out and approve it, depending on your community in a lot of ways. And even to access the grid, you still have to pay them. Even if you're not using any of their electricity, you have to still pay them a subscription fee.
Right.
Which is hilarious to me, right? So whether it's Core Energy or one of these other companies, like you still have to pay them that like activation fee to just be attached to their grid, even though you're not using any of it. And what's even crazier, Mike, which is just is that you might be producing, I don't know, let's say you're producing 80, 100, I'm just round numbers, 100 kilowatt hours, whatever. You're producing that with your solar panels. And any excess that you can't store in your own batteries or whatever, your own cars that you don't use, you're sending back to the grid. But when you send it back to the grid, they're not paying you a 1-for-1 like what they would charge you to use their energy. They're going to pay you like, I don't know, 1/10 of the cost. It's amazing to me. Like they'll charge you the full price. But if you want to take the energy from my production and send it back to you that you can use, you're going to just pay me like a fraction of the cost.
Those rates depend on the grid operator, but Clayton, and by the way, I used to mock EVs and I used to mock solar. And you can tell that I've changed my tune on that because of the changing world situation. But today, I do not recommend grid tie systems at all. I recommend a completely parallel, disconnected, off-grid system. And the reason, right. So number one, when the grid goes down, you want to be able to use your system. And grid tie systems always go down when the grid goes down. So they're useless in that scenario. Secondly, I don't want to have permission from the power company or even the county or the city, but this varies depending on where you live. But I don't want to have permission to connect to their grid. I don't want to have an inspector come out and tell me I didn't put the right number of screws into the plywood or whatever. So personally, I live in Central Texas. It's a rural place. We don't have a lot of regulations, to each person, you got to do what's right for your situation. But I don't ask for permission to build an off-grid solar system. I just learn the way to do it safely and professionally, and I get it done. And as a result, also, battery storage technology has just now become mature enough to make this economically feasible. So before now, and by the way, the battery tech is coming out of mostly China.
Yeah.
And we're just seeing a surge of new sodium ion battery chemistry out of companies like CATL, C-A-T-L, that will be a game changer. But even sodium iron phosphate or LFP batteries are available now. I buy the rack mount batteries. I've actually got some just sitting here in the studio because I'm about to film on this. But they're rack mount, like 51 volt batteries, and you tie them all into an inverter. I buy US made inverters, like Sol Arc, a veteran company in Texas, for example. But I'll buy the batteries from Chinese battery makers because those are the best batteries. Then you can actually afford to have an off-grid system that can charge your cars. It can run air conditioning. You can buy air conditioning units and you can cool your home when the grid is down. So that's a level of freedom that I think the establishment doesn't want you to have access to. And then they also can't monitor you. Then their smart meters don't know what you're using, what you're doing. They have no control and they have no way to limit you.
I love that. I'm going to do that. So, our whole studio, our house is fully self-sufficient on solar, but of course we're connected to the grid as well. So, you just feel like, well, you get a big bad storm, something like that. You're going to want to have that grid backup, in case. Right.
But you could have a transfer switch though.
Right.
You could just have a big transfer. So I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, please. You know way more about this than I do.
Completely off-grid system.
Yeah.
And then you could also have your grid, and there's a giant transfer switch that an electrician can install, and it has 3 positions. It has the lever at the top, which is like you're on the grid, and then in the center, it's disconnected from everything because that's a safety issue. And then in the lower position, you're on your solar grid, your local solar battery grid. So you can totally do. You could convert your existing system into this by adding batteries to it. And then you could switch it anytime you want it.
We'll have to talk offline about this.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, but I'm going to pick your brain more deeply on this question because we've got the big batteries, we've got the whole thing. So, because I want to be, I don't want to be tied to this, and I've been trying to prepare my family. This is what I love about what you talk about and teach is that I want to be prepared. So we've been, making sure that we have food stores. You put out a tweet the other day. Well, actually, before I get to that, you mentioned about mocking EVs, and I think what this is so important because for whatever reason, conservatives, and I don't know, it doesn't really matter what political bent you are, but I remember just a few years ago, a lot of conservatives were like very much like anti-EV, and there was very sort of mocking it, like give me my gas guzzling car, whatever it is, but it was a very sort of mocking tone about it. And I wonder why. Like, why do you think that was? Do you think that was part of maybe some kind of programming, some sort of, because I think it was like, I don't know. I question everything now. Everything's just one big lie. So when I saw like when I hear like conservatives have their big trucks, they're like, no way, you'd never catch me with an EV. You're like, is this part of some programming?
Well, first of all, the climate cultism was very easy to mock because it was so retarded.
Yeah.
So, and then it was pretty much the climate alarmists who were pushing EVs.
True. So it was the people that were gluing their hands to the roadways and getting in the way of people going to work, and people were like, get these freaking nuts out of here. They just want their EVs and solar panels. Yeah, I get it.
So,
but it seems like it was fabricated. It seems like it was fabricated, doesn't it? Now when you sit back and you think about it. It was engineered.
Yeah, totally. It was engineered to cripple our energy infrastructure and to set human civilization back a few decades, or at least Western civilization. That's why it was engineered, I'm convinced. And that's why China is ahead, again, in energy infrastructure, which has huge ramifications in the AI race to superintelligence. For example, I live in Texas, and Texas has its own power grid. Did you know that the number of requested interconnections to the Texas grid right now, the number requested in terms of gigawatts is more than twice the total production of the entire state right now? And that's requested by the year, I think, 2032. So in other words, Texas would have to triple its power grid output by 2032. That is not going to happen.
Wow.
Not going to happen. So I don't trust the power grid. Even though we have our own power grid in Texas, even though Texas is energy abundant, and I'm glad for that. And by the way, I am going to buy an EV, but I'm also going to have my diesel truck. I'm going to have a 500-gallon tank of diesel, and I'm going to have a solar array, so I have a choice. And I think that's the smartest play. Sometimes I need the diesel, and I have storage, but that diesel depends on a refinery that's probably on freaking fire right now in Saudi Arabia or or Russia or somewhere else, right?
So you got to have options. You got to be prepared.
You can't have options.
You can't be dogmatic about it and go kind of all in on what, it's like, I get it. I have solar. I'm fully all in on that. I want to be able to protect my family. We get a lot of sunshine here. It's the sunniest state in America is the state of Colorado. People think it's Florida because of the marketing. It's not. So we get more sunshine year round. So I want to use that. Why shouldn't I use that? I don't want to have to pay for electricity and power outages. Grid goes out. Substations go out. I want to be able to protect my family. I have kids. I want to be able to feed them and take care of them. So I want to be prepared. You also want to have those backup generators, those other things, food stores in place and other things, and be able to prep and be prepared. How fragile is the grid in terms of you mentioned just the power production itself, just the people attaching themselves to the grid, whether it's in Texas or these other 17 locations that the Department of Energy is warning about?
Well, the grid is so fragile that I think it was 2021 when we had the great freeze in Texas.
Yeah.
And I experienced rolling blackouts, and we had 8 minutes of power every 30 minutes for days like that. And we were told in the aftermath of it that had they not started the rolling blackouts, there would have been such permanent damage to the equipment on the grid that the entire state of Texas would have had no power for 6 months. And we were that close to that happening. Imagine. I mean, what would that do to your economy? Your economy goes to zero, right?
Yeah.
Without a power grid, or almost zero. Now, at the same time, the PJM interconnection, which is the eastern 13 states that's served by PJM. I mean, you mentioned the Southwest earlier, but the eastern is what's known to be even more vulnerable. They already announced, you can read it on their website, that come June of 2027, they can't guarantee the normal level of service buffer that they require to meet high demand days. So in other words, on high demand days, very hot days or very cold days, they're going to have rolling blackouts. So if you live in any of those 13 states, which I think it's like 65 million Americans roughly that live in those 13 states, if you're not prepared for rolling blackouts, you're not ready for what's coming, because the data centers are going to get the priority. I mean, think about it. You know, the technocracy is going to keep Skynet alive, even if they have to shut off your air conditioning.
Yeah, I mean, this is why Elon Musk just personally invested in a diesel backup generator company for AI data centers in his own personal. It was $1 billion out of his personal account to buy that company. I forget the name of the company off the top of my head, but yeah.
And diesel. I'm sorry. Diesel generators are a very bad backup option for data centers, because you have to constantly change the engine oil and the oil filters and belts and other things like that in the diesel engines, fuel filters, for example. So that tells you the desperation, Clayton, the desperation. They can't find gas turbines. You know why they can't find gas turbines that are available? Because we sanctioned Russia.
I was going to say, because they're made in Russia. Exactly.
Yeah, because they're made in Russia.
Right.
How do you think Gazprom was pushing gas through Nord Stream? You know, how do you think Russia's generating so much electricity? They are experts in gas turbines. So, of course, what do we do in the West? We blow up the Nord Stream pipelines, and then we sanction the gas turbine exports so that nobody in the West can have them. And then all the tech gurus are trying to build data centers. They don't have enough power, so they're trying to buy gas turbines, and the wait time then stretches out to 8 or 9 years on the larger turbines. Jeez. That's where we are now.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, there's no foresight. There's been no planning in the West for power. None whatsoever.
I mean, forget EMP attacks. And I know, you know, Dennis Quaid has talked about just the fragility of the network in and of itself, even without EMP attacks. Like, just forget that for a second. Some sort of a high atmospheric EMP that would melt everything, and we'd be screwed. We'd be going back to the Stone Ages, really. And maybe we need that, to be honest. But forget that. But the fragility is there, and there's been no moves. There's been some moves, I think, across Texas to try to do some shoring up of the power supply and making sure that there is some new infrastructure in place, but it's nowhere near enough. And I think at the heart of it, government's not going to come save you. You've got to protect yourself. You've got to do what Mike's talking about here. At a bare minimum, what would you say for people to do, Mike, to prepare?
Well, the energy that's accessible to people right now is solar. If you want to be off grid, that's the only, because you can't build a nuclear power plant in your backyard. So solar is the way to go. And I've actually been trying to do solar systems for a long time. My company's warehouse is solar, but that's a grid tie system. But it wasn't until just the last 6 months that the battery technology became mature enough and economical enough to justify buying a large amount of these batteries. And that battery tech is going to get better and better and better. Even, Korean companies, Samsung is going to roll out a new battery facility next year, they say, that has much higher energy density in, kilowatt hours per kilogram of, or watt hours per kilogram is usually in those batteries, faster charge cycles, but much more importantly, longer life of charge discharge cycles. So right now, the standard batteries today, lithium batteries might handle like 3,000 charge discharge cycles. The better LFP batteries can handle now 8,000 or even 10,000 charge discharge cycles. And the technology that's coming next, sodium ion batteries, which are incredibly safe, it's very hard for those to catch on fire. And they're heavy and bulky, but they're great for fixed installations like a ranch or a farm or power grid power shifting off of solar and wind. Those they're much lower cost, very good energy density, and they can cycle 20,000 times. So now you're talking about batteries that you buy once in your life.
Wow.
And you don't have to keep rebuying them. So it's a game changer. And again, China is the main innovator in this space. And I keep wondering what happened in America. Why aren't we? We have chemists, why can't we create the world's most awesome batteries? Or the best, power grid expansion. Why are we always behind the curve on this stuff? And it's just like, our leaders just have no planning. And I'm not talking about just Trump. It's the whole, it goes back to Clinton and worse. It's just, we have no foresight in this country, no long-term plan. Every politician only cares about the next election. Every corporation only cares about the profits for the next quarter. Nobody gives a crap about the next generation in this country, and that's why we're in this situation.
May even go back to Tesla, Nikola Tesla, and the free etheric energy that we probably all have access to right now if we just if they just allowed us to use that energy. Don't get me started. That's a whole other rabbit hole we can go down.
Right, totally.
Or the individuals who are mysteriously disappeared for having, whether it's using water power or things like that. Humidity, power, all of those things. Those people seem to mysteriously disappear, or they're imprisoned for the rest of their life. So I don't know. Don't get me started on that. But yeah, in the United States, we've got Tesla Powerwall 3s, right? Those are LFP technology. So the first two Powerwalls that Tesla rolled out were the old lithium ion, and now the new Tesla Powerwall 3s are that LFP technology. So that's, what'd you say, 10, 15,000 discharges over the course of their life?
Yeah, depending on the battery, they can handle, in some of them, 8 to 10,000 for LFP is pretty common now. But there's something else, Clayton. I hope you don't mind me bringing this in.
Please.
But lithium iron phosphate, right? So the third part of that is the phosphate. Now, phosphate, you have to use very high purity phosphate for these batteries. Phosphate is extracted out of raw phosphate ores using what acid? Sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid is how you extract phosphate to put into phosphate, lithium iron phosphate batteries. Sulfuric acid, a large portion of the world's supply comes out of the Persian Gulf because it's made from the sulfur that's extracted from the sour crude oil, which means it's high sulfur. So you take the sulfur out of the oil when you're processing it, when the strait is open, and then you make sulfuric acid to pull the phosphorus or the phosphates out of raw phosphorus rock ore. So that whole pipeline is now compromised because of the war. It's crazy, Clayton. It's like everywhere you turn, we are getting screwed in some supply chain that's necessary.
Even Rockefeller knew about that, like the excess sulfur. Like, what can I do with all this excess sulfur? Like, I'm going to use it, in my oil, it's Standard Oil. Like, there's all this residue. Like, let's use this and let's actually put this to good use. And now we've cut ourselves off from it.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
It's wild. It's like lithium is a very small component of lithium iron phosphate batteries, actually. Lithium's a very tiny percentage. So it's not the lithium mining. Everybody's worried about the lithium mining. Where's the lithium coming from?
Yeah.
I'm like, where's the sulfuric acid going to come from?
And where's the nickel? Where's the nickel going to come from?
And the helium and the aluminum smelting, right?
Yeah.
If anything, Clayton, we've all received this important education in the last 5 months about where stuff comes from, what elements what commodities, where it all comes from. And so much of it sources back to the Middle East, or at least something that it depends on comes out of the Middle East. I have a food science lab that uses helium, and my helium supplier declared force majeure. But fortunately, I bought, I knew this was coming, so I bought a year's supply of helium in early March. So we're actually fine. But the other labs, like the university labs, are screwed. I would imagine if I call the University of Texas, Austin mass spec lab, like, where are you getting your helium? They probably say, we're not getting helium, or, we're having to scrounge for it. So all these labs across the country and the MRIs for medical imaging, they all run on helium. You have to have it. You don't have it, you don't have medical imaging. The MRIs are all going to be shut down soon if we don't reopen the strait.
That's insane. No, you're right. There's an education for a lot of people. And then people are like, wait, doesn't America have all these minerals? Well, they do. We're sitting on a lot of them, but of course we don't mine for almost anything. So uranium, anything, we send it to Russia to be refined. Whatever we do pull out, 0 uranium mines in this country. So it's insane. I'm sorry, 0 active. We have plenty of them. We have plenty of resources in North America. But of course, presidents and past members of Congress have basically all shut it down. So, wow, this has been eye-opening. And I hope that what people take away from this conversation is, be prepared. Get some sort of a solar array on your house that you can power your home, or at least your vital items in your house, whether it's a refrigerator, air conditioning unit, things like that, baby food maker, things like that to keep your food. My wife when we had our first baby, she had like all this extra breast milk that she, pumping, that she had, and we had it in our freezer, and we had a big power outage and it lost all of it. So man. And that was in the mountains in, Pennsylvania, and this happens. So people need to be prepared for these things. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when this is going to happen. So, well, Mike, thank you. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I used to live in South America, and it was common knowledge that the power grid would fail there in where I was, rural Ecuador. So everybody was just used to it, lived more of a low-tech lifestyle there, and it was fine. But it never got crazy hot or crazy cold, right? You could survive without power. We are going to have to get used to that in North America. We're devolving into more of a third world type of country that focuses on agricultural exports, and we don't have a power grid that's reliable. That's where things are going in the U.S., and it's not going to be turned around anytime soon. So yeah, just like you said, Clayton, get prepared, decentralize, disconnect from the on-grid systems wherever you can for your food, your medicine, your money, your knowledge, your information, even your AI compute. You should have your own local AI infrastructure, and you should download AI models and run them locally so they can't be taken away from you. They can't be banned by the White House, for example. And all of that requires energy. So energy is actually going to be the future wealth. Energy, you can freeze water and make ice. You can run pumps and do hydroponics and grow food. You can run inference with a local GPU, and you can get answers to any question that you can ask in an AI system. Power can cool your home, can charge a car. Eventually, and I interviewed a company, Clayton, that makes electric skid steers. So on a ranch, with a bucket, a skid steer, it's all electric. So I could get ranch work done even if the diesel fuel is gone. See, so energy is actually your freedom in all those areas and much more. So become as energy independent as you can.
Hallelujah. And you can follow Mike. Naturalnews.com is a great place to do a great sort of central hub website to read everything that Mike's been writing and publishing. Also follow him on X as well as the Health Ranger on X. Always love to tap into your vast stores of knowledge on all of these subjects. Mike's great to see you as always. Thank you so much.
You too, Clayton. Thanks for the invite. Take care.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching Redacted. We'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. It's totally free if you want to follow us or subscribe. And if we brought you any value at all, please consider sharing this video with a friend or a loved one on social media. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
If you'd like to help support us, check out all of the affiliate deals I put together for you at rangerdeals.com. And if you go there, you'll see I've done due diligence on all of these affiliates. There's really not that many, but we have partners like Battalion Metals, co-founded by Tucker Carlson, Nessa's organic CBDA hemp extract, Above Phone models that are de-Googled phones, Red Life, here's the peptide company, Limitless, Petmectin, and so much more, including the satellite phone store, VP.net. And for almost all of these, you can use discount code RANGER here, or sometimes it's something else like Brighteon50, but normally the discount code is RANGER, which will save you something on these deals. Now, we do earn a little bit off of these affiliate deals, but it's no additional cost to you, and it helps support our platform and our work for humanity, including our AI projects that offer free open source knowledge in multiple languages. You can check those out at brightlearn.ai and brightanswers.ai. So thank you for supporting us. Check out rangerdeals.com anytime you want to save money on really high-end products and solutions that I personally endorse. I'm Mike Adams, the Health Ranger. Thanks for watching.